We'll finish our conversation after I take care of Laughing Boy.
Top 10 Spider-Man, the animated series episodes. The 90s were the best time to be a kid. Not only did you have iconic venues like Blockbuster and KB Toys to hang out at every week, but you also had the advent of one of the greatest renaissances in animation. And while everyone always refers to Disney movies in this regard, television deserves a special mention. Hand-drawn animation had become cheap enough that cartoons could be produced consistently year after year, and there was something about the way the characters were sketched that made them resemble photorealistic humans. Spider-Man the Animated Series was one of the top shows to come out of this period. Boasting a gorgeous cel-shaded art style that resembled the comics at the time, it attempted to adapt specific storylines whilst appealing to both kids and adults. The result was 5 amazing seasons with 65 episodes to boot. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
You're for real. Just hold that pose, Smiley.
Night of the Lizard. You can't talk about Spider-Man the Animated Series without delving into the episode that started it all, Night of the Lizard. As the title suggests, the story here deals with the emergence of the Lizard, a crazed supervillain that has been kidnapping maintenance employees working in the sewers. While most pilots have a greater focus on exposition, Night of the Lizard was unique in that it began with an action beat a car careening out of control. Spider-Man swings by in time to rescue the driver, who warns him about seeing a lizard-like creature.
The red eyes.
Sure, pal. Whatever you say. New York City.
While Spidey is dismissive, the Daily Bugle newspaper he's working at genuinely believes the stories. When Editor-in-Chief J. Jonah Jameson offers a $1,000 bonus to whoever snaps the first photograph of the monster, Parker immediately begins investigating the sewers. There, he discovers giant-sized footprints that he wants his professor, Dr. Connors, to take a look at. Parker is joined by his fellow classmate, Deborah Whitman. Upon entering the building, Parker's spider sense goes off and the danger is quickly revealed, the lizard that's been terrorizing the city. He escapes, and a flashback to a prior scientific experiment conducted by Parker and Connors reveals the origins of this predicament. The two had developed a serum derived from reptiles that could restore severed limbs. Parker theorizes that this lizard kidnapped the professor. As Spider-Man, Peter heads to the home of Connors' family, where he rightly predicts that that's where the lizard will be. Upon fighting him, Parker discovers that the lizard is actually Connors, his wife disclosing that Connors tried the serum on himself. Connors takes his wife and flees to the sewers, with Spider-Man in full pursuit. There, he frees the kidnapped workers and confronts the lizard one more time, who plans on using a newly constructed laser to transform the rest of humanity into reptile humanoids. After an epic battle under the sewer waters, Spidey uses the device to convert the lizard back into Connors. Connors returns to his family, and Parker gives the reward to Aunt May, who berates Peter for endangering his life. Overall, a solid beginning to what would be a spectacular show.
Nice. I come to the peaceful countryside.
Chapter 4: The Mutant Agenda. One unique thing Spider-Man's writers did was incorporate season-long arcs. While many credit Gargoyles, Justice League, and Avatar with pioneering serialized storytelling in children's cartoons, Spider-Man the Animated Series preceded all of them, and it deserves to be praised for this daring innovation. One of the best ones involved Peter undergoing a rapid mutation. It started at the beginning of Season 2 when Spidey's powers vanished during a skirmish with the newly formed Sinister Six. A consultation with Dr. Connors revealed that there was something going on with his DNA and that it was only going to get worse. Coming from a scientific background, Peter decides that the only person who can help him is a scientist who specializes in genetic mutations, that individual being none other than Professor Charles Xavier. Yes, fans of X-Men. The animated series got to see the first official crossover between the two shows, and here's a fun fact: the producers even flew in all the original voice actors to play their specific character.
He's in the danger room. Bad news. I was in there practicing.
The writers wasted no time debuting the iconic superhero team. Right from the start, Spider-Man attempts to sneak into the X-Mansion only to accidentally trip the security and get brought down into the facility where everyone from Cyclops to Rogue awaits. Surprised by their appearance, Spidey refuses to disclose the reason for his presence, causing Wolverine to threaten to disembowel him. In response, the web-slinger breaks free and attempts to escape the Institute, but ends up in the danger room where a Sentinel simulation is going on. The two sides work together to stop the program, and before further fighting can occur, Professor X appears. Spider-Man explains what's going on and asks the Doctor for a cure, to which Xavier discloses that he does not make cures and instead focuses on helping mutants cope with their problem. Frustrated, Parker leaves only to be followed by Beast, who informs him of another scientist named Herbert Landon, who has reportedly been working on a remedy for mutations. Unbeknownst to both of them, Landon was collaborating with the Kingpin to develop an army of mutants, though fears over his technology being stolen have led him to consider double-crossing Fisk. After going their separate ways, Beast is assaulted and kidnapped by mysterious security guards. His disappearance is not lost on Wolverine, who tracks his scent down to the area where he and Spider-Man talked. Putting two and two together, Wolverine suspects that the web-slinger has something to do with Beast being taken. At a convention hosted by Landon later that day, Parker attends with the hope of finding out if Landon's research has borne fruit. Unfortunately, the presentation is interrupted by the Hobgoblin, who is attempting to extort money from Landon over his secret betrayal of Kingpin. A fight breaks out between Spider-Man and the Hobgoblin, resulting in the building coming apart, though not before everyone makes it to safety. Spider-Man sneaks into Landon's corporation building to figure out why the Hobgoblin was after him. Inside, it's revealed that Landon was the one who had ordered Beast's kidnapping. The two used to work together as friends before McCoy succumbed to his mutation. Landon used Beast's failure to develop what he believes to be a permanent cure for the X gene and other mutations, which he plans to test on the blue-furred mutant first. Before he can investigate further, Spider-Man is attacked by the Hobgoblin, who drags him to another part of the city before the Webhead gets the upper hand. However, their skirmish is interrupted by Wolverine, who has finally tracked Spider-Man and wants answers for Beast's disappearance. The episode ends on a bit of a cliffhanger as the two prepare to brawl. Spider-Man's mutation would go on to stretch for another 4 episodes and culminate in many things, including Peter's transforming into a giant man spider. But this episode was the first time we got to see the X-Men appear in Spider-Man's world, and it was a comic book fan's dream for sure.
I'm one of the good guys. Then why'd you help Fisk kidnap Parker? Just my luck.
Framed, the X-Men weren't the only superheroes to guest star in Spider-Man the Animated Series. Long before Ben Affleck and Charlie Cox donned the esteemed red and black suit, Daredevil and his alter ego Matt Murdock appeared in the 3rd season episode Framed, voiced by actor Edward Albert. This entry opened with a shocking scene, Peter Parker being sentenced to prison for treason.
To determine, I order the defendant held without bond. Bailiffs.
As he's being escorted away in a police caravan, the cops are attacked by a bunch of armed helicopters led by Spider-Man. This imposter kidnaps Peter, who recounts how he ended up in this predicament. It all began when Peter was offered a job by Richard and Wilson Fisk. Beyond excited to be working with a famed philanthropist, Peter immediately accepts it and uses the increased paycheck to finally quit working at the Daily Bugle. All seems to be going well until Peter is stopped by a group of armed individuals while buying a hot dog. Though he manages to escape, these individuals arrest him at Aunt May's house, outing themselves as federal agents who want a disc Peter retrieved from one of Fisk's computers. While under the impression that it's just diagnostic data, the head agent Susan points out that its actual contents are classified military plans. In jail, Parker is surprised that someone has provided him a lawyer, blind attorney Matt Murdock, who vows to prove his innocence. Back in the present day, Parker is taken to a secret hideout where he is met by Richard Fisk. Fisk divulges that he indeed made Parker the fall guy for his own crimes, and that, thanks to the chameleon, Spider-Man has also been successfully framed. Parker is then trapped in a vacuum-sealed room that is slowly being drained of air. As he suffocates, Daredevil arrives, knocking out all the henchmen and rescuing him.
You out.
Who are you?
I'm called the Daredevil.
He tells Peter that he was sent by Murdock and takes him to Murdock's apartment to hide until the heat blows over. There, Murdock explains the reason for his sympathy for Parker. His own father was murdered by the Kingpin after he tried to expose the latter's illegal chemical smuggling. He notes his suspicions that Wilson Fisk is working for this mobster. While Peter sneaks out, Murdock narrates his own origin story about becoming Daredevil following an accident and how he knows that Fisk is actually the Kingpin.
He'll pay for what he's done to the innocent, to the helpless, to whom I've fought.
Parker returns to his apartment to retrieve the Spider-Man costume, then heads to one of Fisk's company buildings to find evidence that will clear his name. Hacking into one of the computers there, Spider-Man is attacked by Daredevil, who believes him to be working with Richard Fisk to set up Peter. Before their fight can finish, security assault the two and set up an explosion that blows up the entire room. The fate of Spider-Man and Daredevil is left on a brilliant cliffhanger that is resolved in the follow-up, The Man Without Fear. The Alien Costume, Part 2. In the first season alone, Spider-Man's writing team made the interesting decision to bring an iconic Spidey villain, Venom. But of course, contrary to how it is in the Sony movies, you can't have Venom without first doing the symbiote bond, and that's exactly what happened. In the first of what would be a 3-part storyline, astronaut John Jameson and his partner travel to an astronomical body to recover a new element isotope called Promethium X.
John, what's going on down there? Do you copy? Seismic disturbance.
Unbeknownst to them, a gooey black substance attaches itself to their rocket right before they return to Earth, causing them to crash land on a bridge. Spider-Man travels there to rescue the two, but following a skirmish with Rhino, falls back, the substance having stuck itself to his costume. Whether you're a fan of the comics or movies, you probably know what happens next. The Thing is actually an alien symbiote that enhances Peter's powers at the cost of his moral code. From standing up to Flash Thompson to almost killing Rhino, Peter dramatically changes. Yet it's the second part that fans no doubt recall the most, due to it featuring a near-deranged Spider-Man. It opens up with Spider-Man brawling with officers of the New York Police Department. While easily overpowering them, the use of a special sonic weapon temporarily gets the better of Peter before the costume pulls them to safety. Frustrated over the city being against him, Parker heads to the Daily Bugle to threaten reporter Eddie Brock and editor-in-chief J. Jonah Jameson over their libel. However, prior to anything serious happening, Jameson secretly alerts the police, causing Peter to retreat again. Having deduced that the new suit is the cause of his increased aggression, he goes to Dr. Connors to get it analyzed. Connors discovers that it is an alien life form that is using Peter as a host to thrive. Despite Connors warning him to get rid of it, Peter departs prematurely. Elsewhere, Jameson fires Brock after discovering that the latter frames Spidey for the Rhino's crimes. Brock returns to his apartment disheartened, only to be assaulted by the Shocker, who wants him to turn over the photos he took of the rocket crash site due to them implicating the Kingpin. Spider-Man follows Shocker back to the Kingpin's hideout, where he steals the Promethium X. In response, Shocker kidnaps John Jameson to ransom him for the element. A standoff ensues during the trade-off wherein Spidey and Shocker battle to the extreme. Here we get some of the web-slinger's best lines, such as,
You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
When the symbiote almost kills the kilt-adorned villain, Peter realizes Connors was right, and that he has to get rid of it. With the aid of a nearby giant bell, Peter frees himself of the symbiote, only for it to attach to a trapped Eddie Brock below. Secret Wars Arrival. Back in the mid-80s, Marvel released a 12-issue crossover event titled Secret Wars, lasting the better part of a year. This crisis saw a multiversal being called the Beyonder arrange massive fights between representatives of what he sees as good and bad. It was an iconic piece of storytelling that, among many other things, gave us Spider-Man's black suit that would go on to become the villain Venom. Well, surprisingly, Spider-Man the Animated Series took a swing at adapting Secret Wars in its 5th season, and the first chapter set the stage for what would be a quality piece of work. It begins with Madam Web transporting Spider-Man to a plane of existence where he is greeted by the Beyonder.
The Beyonder.
Much like the comic, he is interested in seeing a great battle between good and evil set over a peaceful planet titled Battleworld. Despite Spider-Man's pleas, the Beyonder unleashes a group of supervillains onto this utopia, including Dr. Octopus, Dr. Doom, Alistair Smythe, the Lizard, and Red Skull. 1 year later, Battleworld is a hellscape, and it is now up to Spidey to lead a team against the Axis of Evil. The Beyonder transports Parker to a cosmic laboratory that can bring him any superhero he wants in a split second. To combat Doom and Red Skull, Parker calls for the Fantastic Four and Captain America, while he fills his remaining 2 slots with Iron Man and Storm from the X-Men.
What happened?
That's my fault.
As one can imagine, being teleported from Earth to this random space location causes panic and paranoia amongst the prospective heroes, who proceed to fight with each other. Before Spider-Man can restore the peace, the Lizard breaks in and attacks him, though the other heroes manage to knock Connors out. Spider-Man attempts to explain what is going on, but some of the folks, particularly Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four, find his lack of answers about everything too inconvenient and start another skirmish, allowing the Lizard to escape. A pursuit begins, which stops when the team is confronted by a pack of giant Tremors-esque worms that shoot lasers out of their eyes. Despite a valiant stand, the 8, along with Lizard, are forced back into the lab where Iron Man and Mr. Fantastic conclude that the worms were created by the original inhabitants of Battleworld as a final defense against the invading supervillains. While Invisible Woman protects the building with her force field, the others reactivate the lab's security systems. After Reed restores Dr. Connor's brain inside the Lizard body, Spider-Man gathers everyone who agree to work together to stop the Beyonder, finally creating an uneasy alliance amongst each other. Elsewhere, the Beyonder is optimistic over this promising start, but states that there is still much to be done. Back at the Hall of Fame, Connors comforts Peter over his doubts regarding leading this band of troops. Invigorated by his words, Spider-Man reveals a tape recorder he has, informing the Doctor of his intent to document the conflict so that it doesn't remain a secret war. Yeah, you can bet we were stoked for what would happen next. Enter the Green Goblin. The Norman Osborn Green Goblin is widely considered to be Spider-Man's arch-enemy, and rightfully so. Seeing the numerous horrible things he's done to Spidey in the comics, he stands apart as a genuinely evil person. Osborn made his debut in the first season of the animated series as the head of Oscorp, an affiliate of the Kingpin. However, his villainous persona didn't appear until the third season's Enter the Green Goblin. Thanks to a press release, Oscorp is under serious fire for its production of a volatile chemical gas. Despite the bad press and threats of being ousted by his own company, Fisk blackmails Osborn into continuing the research, threatening to harm his family if he doesn't. With no other choice, Osborn tries to speed up the project, resulting in an explosion that destroys the facility. Despite the efforts of Spider-Man, Osborn is nowhere to be found and presumed dead.
Poor Harry. There's no way his dad could have survived. There's nothing I can...
Harry is named to the Oscorp board, wherein he accuses the other members of betraying his dad and driving him to his destruction. In light of the fact that nobody was recovered, Fisk suggests holding off the naming of a new CEO until later. Elsewhere, he orders Osborn's assistant to finish the gas experiment. Later, a mysterious figure kidnaps one of the board representatives, then attempts to do the same to Jonah Jameson. Spider-Man pursues the figure, assuming it to be the Hobgoblin, given the large glider. However, a confrontation reveals him to be a new villain calling himself the Green Goblin. This goblin crushes Spidey's web shooters and escapes with Jonah. Because the Hobgoblin got his weapons and glider from Oscorp, Spider-Man assumes this green version is doing the same and investigates the building where he finds Harry frustrated. When the Green Goblin departs around the same time, Spider-Man assumes that Harry is him. After learning from police detective Terry Lee that the Goblin is abducting Oscorp's board of directors, Spider-Man heads to the home of Felicia Hardy due to her mom, Anastasia, being a part of it. Unfortunately, the Goblin is already there, and after a brief scuffle, escapes with Anastasia. Later, Fisk himself is captured. Mary Jane expresses her frustration over Harry's lack of communication to Peter and decides to explore the destroyed building where Norman allegedly died. However, the Goblin finds her and takes her to his hideout, where he traps her alongside the others. There, the Goblin states that justice will be served to the board members for how they mistreated Norman in his life. Thanks to a tracking device he put on MJ, Spider-Man arrives, rescues the victims, and battles the Goblin, whose pumpkin bombs caused the building to flood. With the Goblin trapped under falling debris, Spider-Man unmasks him, disclosing his identity to be Norman Osborn, who was granted superhuman powers by the gas explosion at the expense of his sanity. The Goblin serum runs out and Norman is rendered unconscious. As the place goes underwater, Spider-Man is rescued by Harry, who uncovered a subterranean subway tunnel that he theorizes his dad would have used to survive. To spare him the truth, Spider-Man claims the Green Goblin was holding Norman hostage. At a press release, Osborn claims that Oscorp will no longer be involved in the chemical warfare business and that Harry will be joining him in managing the company. The episode ends on a nice note, with Felicia thanking Spider-Man for saving her mom with a kiss.
Nothing will stand in the way of Mordo's will. Not even
Doctor Strange. At this point, it should come as no surprise that we particularly loved episodes that saw other Marvel superheroes brought into the mix, and the third season opened up with yet another one of these, this one being the Sorcerer Supreme himself, Doctor Strange. Spider-Man is shown pursuing a floating Mary Jane. An immediate flashback showcases that MJ was kidnapped after she went to meet a man claiming to be her estranged father. With Parker feeling guilty over not telling anyone else about this, he escapes into the city to try and find her, where he sees the aforementioned floating cabal. They head to a building housing a magical wand and assault its occupant, Wong. Spider-Man attempts to intervene, but the magical powers possessed by MJ and her cohorts are too much for him. Luckily, Doctor Strange appears, forcing the attackers to flee.
Was Hocus Pocus to shame?
Spider-Man pursues them to a mansion, but a magic barrier prevents him from going any further. Inside, the evil sorcerer Mordo praises his acolytes, only to get a vicious scolding from the interdimensional being Dormammu for failing to get the wand. Back at the Sanctum Sanctorum, Strange tells Wong he suspects Mordo to be behind the attack, having seen his dark side when they were students under the Ancient One. After finding out that Mordo is masking his activities under a charter called the Center for Reunification, Peter goes undercover there, only to get caught and brainwashed by Mordo. He leads a second assault on Strange's compound, and though Strange manages to remove Mordo's spell, the wand is taken. Teaming up with the Doctor and Wong, Spider-Man heads to the center once again, where they intervene on Mordo's ritual. While Strange battles the Dark Magician, Spider-Man travels to Dormammu's dimension inside. The latter transforms into a giant purple dragon.
Can't breathe.
Defeating Mordo, Strange follows Spider-Man and the two escape. In the real world, Mary Jane is still brainwashed. Strange tries to help her see the truth about her father. However, Dormammu grabs her and takes her to his plane of existence, attempting to trick her into becoming his vessel to enter Earth. Thankfully, Mary Jane rejects his offer, allowing Strange to pull her back and seal the portal for good.
We must go, Doctor.
The two wizards part ways with Spider-Man, who takes MJ back home. The episode ends with Strange realizing that someone is watching him, that person being none other than Madam Web. While Dormammu and Mordo would go on to reappear in later episodes, this was unfortunately the last time we saw the Master of the Mystic Arts.
Break it.
And away we go.
Turning point. Gwen Stacy is a popular character from the Spider-Man mythos that surprisingly never appeared in the 90s cartoon until the finale. It was strange considering the numerous love interests of Peter Parker that were present in the show, including Liz Allen, Deborah Whitman, and Felicia Hardy, though the decision reportedly had to do with the grim fate surrounding Stacy in the comics. That being said, the writers did manage to do a loose adaptation of the infamous night Gwen Stacy died storyline. In the season finale of Season 3, titled Turning Point, Spider-Man decides he wants to stop help with Madam Web due to him and Mary Jane loving each other. Web grants this wish, but not before warning him about facing a monster with two heads in the near future. Elsewhere, the Green Goblin, having been resuscitated in Norman Osborn in the prior episode, successfully miniaturizes a device called the Time Dilation Accelerator that enables him to create dimensional portals. As Spider-Man is the only one who knows that the two are the same, the Goblin decides to destroy his life. Using the accelerator, the Goblin manages to spy on Spider-Man and discover his secret identity. While the Norman side pleads that Parker is Harry's best friend, the Goblin half convinces him that Parker was merely using Harry to get to Norman. At a dinner date, Mary Jane discloses that the two of them have been invited to Harry's birthday party. The next night, the two attend, only for Harry to reveal that Peter was only invited at the insistence of his father, drawing Pete's suspicions.
Spider strength? Oh, I'm sorry.
Those suspicions are confirmed when Osborn acts uncannily out of character, making sly references to the secrets the two of them share. Realizing the truth, Peter sets up a diversion that sends everyone out of the manor. Unfortunately, due to not wearing his web shooters, the Goblin is able to get the upper hand in their fight, with him tying Peter up and dragging him through the sky, in a direct homage to The Amazing Spider-Man number 39 by John Romita Sr. Peter manages to get his web shooters on and turns the tables, causing the Goblin to rethink his approach and go after Aunt May. After seeing her asleep, however, the Goblin decides to switch gears and target Mary Jane. With the Time Dilation Accelerator, he is able to kidnap MJ and take her to the Brooklyn Bridge. There, Spidey and Osborn engage in a brutal fight, which results in Mary Jane and Osborn being teleported away by the device. Distraught, Spider-Man calls on Madam Web and asks her to bring back MJ. However, Web refuses, claiming she can't, due to Peter deciding to do things on his own. Infuriated, Parker demands her to never call on him again, a promise she obliges to keep until the ultimate battle emerges.
Comes for the ultimate battle. I will return.
Peter is returned to the bridge, where he reflects on how he failed MJ, who is gone forever. Elsewhere, MJ is shown floating around in a distant, less spiral of space fog. While not exactly the same as Gwen Stacy's death, the fact that she never reappeared in the series was the closest the producers were able to do while staying within censorship guidelines.
Between the two of us, Dad, there won't be enough left of Spider-Man to fit in a matchbox.
Carnage. There's a reason you don't see Cassidy in much Spider-Man media. He's a completely deranged sociopath. Giving a serial killer the powers of a symbiote was a stroke of mad genius by David Michelinie and Erik Larson, yet it limited his adaptation potential, given PG/PG-13 rating guidelines. Despite the censors, the producers of the 90s cartoon brought him into the show. The third season, Dormammu, attempting to get back into the real world again, orchestrates the merging of the symbiotes with their host. Venom for Eddie Brock and Carnage for Cassidy. The plan is successful, and in return, the two are obliged to steal a device for the supervillain's lackey Mordo. While Spider-Man and War Machine are able to beat Venom, Carnage gets the upper hand and successfully grabs the machine, revealed to be an interdimensional portal creator. Back at Mordo's lair, Dormammu informs Carnage that he needs a certain amount of life forms to give him the energy to come to Earth. Within the confines of TV rules, Cassidy goes on a killing spree, absorbing the energy from numerous New Yorkers. Spider-Man tries to stop him, but Cassidy easily gets the better of him. Luckily for the webhead, Carnage reaches his full soul capacity, preventing him from draining Spider-Man. At the Daily Bugle, Jonah gets into an argument with entrepreneur Tony Stark, whose company was making the device in question. Venom breaks in and attacks, wanting revenge on Jonah and Peter.
We call service.
No, Eddie!
The efforts of Spider-Man and Iron Man are able to stop him, but not before he retreats with Dr. Ashley Kafka, who was treating him when he was a patient of hers. With Madam Web contacts Spider-Man, revealing that Venom can be a potential ally due to his love of Ashley. Ashley convinces Eddie to go to Dr. Connors, who successfully separates the symbiote from him. Elsewhere, Cassidy assaults Detective Lee. Spider-Man arrives and a battle ensues between the two, resulting in Spider-Man's defeat again. Before his life force can be drained, Ashley arrives in an attempt to help Cassidy the way she did with Brock. However, Cassidy takes the opportunity to steal her energy instead. Spider-Man goes to Brock for help in tracking down Carnage. Angered over what happened to Ashley, Brock rebonds with the symbiote and leads Spidey and Iron Man to Mordo's new lair. A major brawl ensues, during which Carnage successfully unleashes Dormammu. Thinking fast, Spider-Man reverses the polarity of the portal gun, dragging the spellcaster back to his zone and freeing the souls that were taken. Carnage is sucked too, but not before he attempts to take Ashley with him. Not wanting this to happen, Venom attacks Cassidy, telling Ashley he will always love her as the two symbiotes are pulled away. In the end, Spider-Man is visited by Madam Web once again, who informs him that he will eventually have to make a great sacrifice in the future.
This is my party. You're not invited. Look out! Stop this.
The return of Hydro Man. Remember when we said that Mary Jane never returned again in the series? That was a slight lie. She had made a surprising reappearance in the 4th season, and despite the lack of explanation, Peter happily accepted and married her. Unfortunately, that joy wasn't going to last. In the 5th season, Morris Bench, aka Hydro Man, reappeared and kidnapped MJ during her and Peter's honeymoon. Aided by Black Cat, Peter eventually faced off against Bench in a factory where Bench got the upper hand. However, Spidey was saved at the last minute by MJ, who suddenly had the powers of hydrokinesis.
What's happening to me?
Mary Jane.
Well, in the second part, we get our answers. After escaping the facility, Peter and Black Cat part ways while MJ reports the presence of Hydro Man to the police. To find out what's going on with MJ, Peter and she go to Dr. Connors, who places her under hypnosis to figure out her true origin story. A nightmare ensues, during which Mary Jane imagines, amongst other things, being chased by a giant clown and getting forced to walk the plank of a pirate ship. Connor hopes that these images will help her recall what happened. Elsewhere, Bench meets with the mysterious Dr. Miles Warren and informs him that he's having trouble reshaping himself. Warren warns Bench about overexerting until he could run more tests, but Bench refuses, citing the need to steal Mary Jane from Peter Parker. Bench assaults MJ and Peter on a bridge, successfully taking the former underwater and away. With no other way of tracking her, Peter determines that the visions from her dream must contain clues as to where Bench took her, the pirate ship being a nearby theme restaurant. At the restaurant, the concierge tells Peter how a soaked MJ walked in asking for help, and when he tried to give her a coat, she vanished north. Continuing on the trail, Spider-Man finds a toy shop with a killer robot inside. Its laser blasts unintentionally unveil a secret underground area that takes Spidey to the Green Goblin lair that had previously been destroyed. Inside, MJ vaguely recognizes the place but refuses to be with Maury. Following another skirmish between him and Spidey, Miles Warren appears. Spider-Man recognizes him as a disgraced professor who was barred from the government following unethical cloning experiments. Warren confirms this to be true, having been forced to continue his work under the radar. In a moment of much needed exposition, he discloses how he cloned the original Hydro Man due to Bench's unique DNA. However, this Bench duplicate wanted to marry Jane, causing Warren to use MJ's DNA with Bench's. Unfortunately, this clone ended up retaining her counterpart's memories and feelings for Peter Parker and went out looking for him. In a tragic twist, Warren claims that both clones are deteriorating. Enraged, Bench destroys the lab, accelerating his demise, and allows Warren to escape. MJ evaporates too, but not before telling Peter that she loved him.
Jane Watson, she loves Peter Parker more than anything in the world.
Spider-Man yells in anguish before escaping. Atop the Brooklyn Bridge, Spidey is met again by Madam Web, who tells him that she knows where MJ is and that she will help him find her if he fights for her in an upcoming battle.
Here's something else you might have forgotten. Well, that's the last of my web.
6th season? With a number of cliffhangers present throughout the series, it's no secret that there are plans for a 6th season that sadly never came to fruition. However, the next best thing allegedly happened. Writer John Semper Jr. gave a copy of a script of the planned 6th season. Its title? Peter Finds Mary Jane. We'll post the link to it in the description box, but suffice to say, it actually lived up to the hype of a question drawn out over 3 seasons. Now, all that being said, we insist you to take this supposed Season 6 screenplay with a grain of salt for several reasons. It was posted on a blog site, not a trade, involved Carnage slashing someone's throat, an action that any writer of the show would have known wouldn't get past the censors, and discussed the appearance of Spider-Gwen, a character who was not even created until 2015. Still, if even part of it was true, we would have been more than satisfied. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
You megalomaniacs have such a weird sense of humor.